Is this? Yeah. I've never been very impressed by the fine-tuning argument anyway, because, you know, the universe is fine-tuned for life, and there's life. Wow. Wouldn't it be better if the universe wasn't fine-tuned for life at all, i.e. it was completely impossible for life to exist, and yet life did exist? That would be evidence for the supernatural.
It's funny you should say that, because the other day I made exactly the same argument to a pleasant young gentleman on YouTube called Dr. Craig Videos. It's not William Lane Craig, it's just someone who really, really likes him. And that's exactly what I said. And you're right. We're here, but the anthropic principle allows us to be here. If the universe was fine-tuned such that it would be impossible for us to be here, then yeah, that would be quite compelling. I agree. But the thing about fine-tuning is that it has very deep theological problems. You can postulate that as some kind of alternative direction for God or the Creator to take. But just consider the fact that the universe is fine-tuned, even if it is. Why is it fine-tuned? Well, it's fine-tuned because nature only allows intelligent life to exist if the conditions are very precise. So why is nature making the rules? Why does any universe have to be fine-tuned if it's created by an omnipotent creator? By its own definition, an omnipotent creator can create an infinite number of life-supporting universes. So why should there be only one that actually works? This is a real theological problem with the fine-tuning argument that no one has addressed, as far as I know. And I would be interested if anyone has any ideas, or if any theologians are secretly sneaking in who would like to say something about it, because I honestly don't know. But that's a very good point. Any other questions?
Oh dear.
I like what we're doing here at the moment.
Why do you think there are laws of physics in the first place?
All right, don't go just yet. What do you mean by first place? I'm joking. Yeah, why are there laws of physics? Why is there something rather than nothing? People have said that. Well, again, you know, I don't think this is a question for which there is a why. I don't think why figures for laws of physics. I just don't think it's a valid question. We're very, very good at creating questions that we can't answer, and I think this is one of them. Sorry? How? How are there laws of physics? Well, there just are, you see. And that's not too uncomfortable for cosmologists and physicists to deal with. You know, nature conspires to be creative for some reason. We don't really know if there are laws of physics. It could be that there's just one law of physics, and that everything we see is some emergent consequence of that. It could be that there's just one parameter, just one constant behind the entire universe, and everything else is constructed as a result. It's like a drop of water turning into a crystal, turning into a snowflake. And it grows this fine structure as it does so. So you just have some very, very simple beginning, and from that, necessarily with quantum mechanics involved, these quantum preconditions for things to be relatively unstable within certain probabilistic limits, this randomness that enters the universe allows anything to happen. And therefore, creativity comes out of it because, you know, the opposite of creativity is destructive and it's not stable, so it just couldn't be here. So I think you know, laws of physics exist because laws of physics are stable, and anything else would be unstable and wouldn't exist. Yes?
Run.
I'm actually giving a talk about how to use 2 mics.
Do you think the experiment's been done with the LHC will provide us with much better insight of what's actually going on, or do you think maybe the case has been overstated slightly?
We only have one roaming mic. I'm sorry.
CERN, the LHC in CERN is an absolutely magnificent experiment. It's built principally to find one thing, this thing we call the Higgs boson, developed by Peter Higgs, who has questioned its existence, which is a bit embarrassing. Or the Higgs field, sometimes the way it's expressed in the standard model of particle physics. And the Higgs field is interesting because it couples very unusually with particles. Some particles it couples with and introduces a mass term, and others it doesn't, and that's why you end up with massless bosons like photons, which we can't explain. So we don't understand this coupling behavior of the Higgs, and that's something the LHC is trying to work out. The problem is that the Higgs is part of the standard model of particle physics, and something I forgot to mention, I'm glad you asked that question, is that in the standard model, there are something like 25 parameters which are incredibly finely tuned. Maybe not all 25 of them, and there might be more. Not all of them have to be incredibly precise. Some of them will allow universes to evolve, it would seem, without them. But there are certain parameters. So the standard model, which the LHC is testing to improve or to kind of expand upon, is itself subject to quite a few fine-tuning problems. And the problem with particle physics like the standard model, and it's a great model, it's only been around for something like 50 years, and it's absolutely phenomenally powerful at advancing our knowledge of particles and things like that. The problem with the standard model is that it's a mess. It has lots of exceptions at high energies, which you have to account for by adding additional fudge factors here and there, and it still kind of works, but it's a bit broken here and there. And it doesn't gel well with things like the general theory of relativity. So we've ended up with all these different things at different scales, quantum field theory and the standard model for particles, general theory of relativity for large masses, and these things don't glue together very well. And as a result, it's like imagining the universe is a box. Nature is a box, and you can't just open the box and find out the big secret. You have to build your own box, which is your physical model, and approximate it as much as possible. File down the edges until it looks very much like the real box. But the problem is that the approach we're taking is like getting two different people to work on two different parts of the box, and they use different sized bolts or something. So our model ends up being tacked together from messy bits. Marcus Chown has expressed this in much better terms than I can. But basically, our physical models are not neat, and the goal of grand unified theories, which may be advanced from the Large Hadron Collider, but is not the principal idea for designing it, I think is much more noble. It's more elegant to have this grand unified theory which works at all scales. And the Large Hadron Collider may be the first experiment in the world to actually be able to test the validity of string theory, the existence of higher dimensions. So that's really exciting. Good question, thank you. Any other questions? Got one at the back. I bet you love that.
I have an idea. We'll go for 2 questions. Less running. Right, so one, and do we have a second in advance? No? Okay, no, I'll have the fun of that.
Cheers. You said you kind of got into doing this sort of thing as a response to you watching videos from William Craig and whatnot. You said you spent a lot of time kind of arguing with his, obviously eloquent lackeys on YouTube. Do you think you can ever win an argument with them?
Quite related, actually. How effective do you think, or how best is the internet and YouTube used to disseminate information?
Okay, winning arguments with complete dullards. If you go into an argument and all you're trying to do is win the argument, then you have failed. You've been wound up the way that I was when I talked to that guy in that video comments. There is no winning an argument, I don't think. I don't think arguments are designed to be won. I think arguments are wholly destructive because they are the antithesis of progress and debate, which is where you actually educate your opponent and they come away from it learning more. And you come away from it learning more, at least about their position, even if it's complete crap. You still come away with it with some experience that you can make use of. The way that I operate on YouTube, or at least did, and probably will continue to because it's funny, is to just debunk stuff. Just take really funny claims. Some of them are ridiculous. Some of them are relevant. And just make refutations which are supposed to be entertaining and educational at the same time. And then use that as a platform to put lots of little facts in and get people familiar with astronomy and astrophysics and cosmology and other elements of physics. And I just don't think you can win an argument by the definition of an argument. But as for sort of winning, if you like, as showing them and getting them to see the problem, the only way to do it is with incredible patience. It's the only way I've ever had any success is to be incredibly patient. And there was a young chap in I think he's in Australia. His name is Truthful Christian, which says it all, because you have to qualify Christianity with truth. And he has no idea what he's talking about, but he likes to talk about science. He does all the time. And I got into a debate with him over Skype. I don't know how or why. He's 19. He's completely brainwashed. But it was quite an interesting discussion, and he started reeling off all the stuff he'd heard from Kent Hovind and Ray Comfort and so on. And I just sat down and just let him finish his sentences and then tell him why I thought each one was wrong. And by the end of about 15 minutes of discussion, which was 15 minutes of my evening I will never get back, he did actually concede a few things. He laughed at the idea of geocentrism, even though one of the guys that he looks up to most is an outspoken geocentrist. So he has come to see why I find his position ridiculous, at least come to experience the same thing of seeing an argument and thinking, that's just complete bollocks, which is what I think when I hear creationists talking. And that's what he thought when he heard geocentrists talking. So, patience, that's all I can say. Second question, could you just remind me? It was about... Yeah. I'm not the best person to ask, because I am not the best person on the internet. I think... Evan Harris's talk highlighted possibly the best way to use the internet earlier, which was incredibly insulting to people like myself. Sorry, Evan, but it was. Saying that, the internet is for getting things started, and it's not really for, hashtags aren't campaigns and all that. It's true. I think that the best way to use the internet the best way to use the internet for disseminating information is to brand something as a piece of information. Like, I came up with a series. It was called Creation Astronomy Propaganda Debunked. Creation Astronomy Propaganda has an acronym which is CRAP. So you can just shorten it to CRAP Debunked, which is what it is. And that brand became really popular because it was like a series of information. So I think hashtags do have their value because they brand a particular piece of discussion. And it can be quite funny, something like nutsack, which... I have to say, I just sniggered every time I saw it, and I still do because, nutsacks. Anyway, so branding the information and making it like, turning it into a meme, because not all things you say on the internet are memes, but memifying it, but not in a sort of 4chan way that just turns it into a funny macro, but keeping it relevant and turning it into a meme. That's the best thing I can suggest. However, if you want advice about how to be successful on the internet, don't ask me, ask someone else.
Rules 1 and 2. Right. What? Oh, I'm sorry. If anyone doesn't know, nutsack refers to Dr. Is it David? David Nutt, who was sacked for criticising the Home Office's, someone's judgment on drugs. Anyway, any more questions? Good. Right. Well, thanks, Tom, again.